And hello! We've talked many times now about installing and running software on the command line, and in the early videos we talked about how to get to a command line by remote SSHing into a server somewhere. We talked about DigitalOcean. We also talked about installing command line systems, terminals and such, on your local computer. And that's all great and well, but so far everything we have done has been in some kind of a window on your screen, whether it's a terminal window on the Mac or Windows or something along those lines, even the terminal on Linux, it doesn't matter. How about we set up a computer that boots directly to the command line? Back in the 80s and 90s, before Windows 95 and Mac really took off with their GUI interfaces, you'd flip on the switch and the computer would come up and you'd get like a C prompt for DOS or a / for some kind of Unix system. And you just start typing and doing your stuff. You wouldn't have to deal with graphic interfaces at all. Well, we can do that. And of course you can do that on an expensive desktop computer if you want, but you don't need a lot of power for most command line applications. What we're going to do is set up a Raspberry Pi. We're going to set it up to boot into the command line, and this week I'm going to show you how to put one together, how to set up the software, and how to boot it up locally. Next time, I'm going to show you how to set it up so you can remote into this, just like you would some other server somewhere else. And this is the Raspberry Pi 3 Model B+. I think I paid $37 for it at Amazon. You might be able to find it more inexpensively elsewhere. For this purpose, if you happen to have an older Raspberry Pi Model 2, it'll work fine. It might not be as fast, it doesn't have all the features, but they'll work. It doesn't matter. So what you're going to need is Raspberry Pi, the motherboard, again, mid $30. You will need a micro SD card and probably one of the little adapters to make it a full-size SD card. We're going to put the operating system on here with a regular computer. I'm going to do it on my Mac, but the procedure is the same way for Windows or Linux. Doesn't matter. You're going to use your computer to put the operating system on here. Raspian or Mate or one of the other Raspberry Pi compatible operating systems. We're going to put this on in the computer, then we're going to pull this out and put the small card in the Raspberry Pi. That's what it'll boot up from. Now you can make the Raspberry Pi boot from a regular hard drive, but not initially. First time out, you have to do the SD card, and that's what we're going to do. Okay, motherboard, SD card. You also need a power supply, and this is a 3.5 amp, fairly low wattage power supply with a, I'm going to say micro USB port. Basically, if you order one that's made for the Raspberry Pi, any of them will work. Probably $6, $7, maybe $8. Another way to do this is to buy one of the kits that comes with a power supply, a motherboard, a memory card, and maybe even a case. You don't absolutely need a case to get started, but if you're going to let this thing be set up for a while, you're going to want to keep the dust off. And there are many cases you can buy. I've got this one here. I think I paid $5 for it 5 or 6 years ago. This is a Model 2, so it's a little older, but they all are very similar. They've got the USBs and Ethernets, HDMI, audio jack, power, and the little memory slot hole for the SD card. This one is clear. It's got a big cutout over here for the GPIO pins, which I don't really use, but it's there. I like it because it's clear and you can see what's inside. The little lights show up, and it's kind of cool. But there's a million different ones. I've seen some very fancy looking wooden ones on Amazon you can buy. Really makes it look like race cars, books, or anything else you want. Okay, but let's see what you got to do to put this thing together. Let's start that now. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is we're going to need the SD card. There we go. Okay, so this is if you've never seen one, they're pretty common with cell phones and things. This right here is the actual SD card. this tiny little thing. And this bigger one here is just an adapter to let it fit inside a standard SD card slot in your computer. You just take the little thing here, plug it in, and it slides in solidly. Now we take this piece and we go over and plug it into the computer. Okay, so we've inserted the micro SD card into the micro SD card to full-size PC card adapter. It's plugged into the computer. Now we need to get the operating system for the Raspberry Pi. There's two choices we've got. Well, there's more than two choices. There's two of them that I like. The first one is Raspian, and that's at raspberrypi.org/download/Raspian. And this is, I guess, what you would call the official operating system for the Raspberry Pi. Go there, and what you're probably going to want is Raspian Stretch with desktop and recommended software. It's got a whole bunch of stuff installed in it. There is a somewhat scaled down version that is just the basic stuff with desktop, and then there's one that's got even less. We're just going to go with the big one for today. Once you figure out what you're doing and you want to start removing things, maybe you want to try one of the small ones. But you can either download it as a zip file or download it as a torrent if you know how to do torrents. And when that's done, we'll move on to the next step. The other option, if you don't want to use Raspian, another nice one is Ubuntu Mate for the Raspberry Pi. And this is a much bigger desktop. It's got a lot more apps. It's got a lot more bells and whistles. It looks a lot nicer. On the downside, it's a little bit slower than Raspian. Raspian is somewhat scaled down, and it's fast. If you want to get some performance out of it, you go with Raspian. If you want the one that's the most like a real desktop computer, you may want to try Ubuntu Mate. Like you can get from the name, it's Ubuntu. So you go to ubuntu-mate.org/raspberry-pi, and you get this page right here where you can download it. Okay, so once those are done, you're going to have one of two files. The 2019-0408 Raspian Stretch, or Ubuntu Mate 1804 Beta 1 Desktop, blah, blah, blah. Now notice that this one says April of 2019. This is May 2019 right now, so this is just barely a month old. Ubuntu Mate is using the LTS version of Ubuntu, so it's not quite as current. Nothing wrong with that though. LTS is a good way to go. So these two are both officially still supported. Okay, so now we need to get that file onto the flash drive. And to do that, you need a special utility called Etcher. There are other ways to do it. Etcher is the easiest. And this is at balena.io/Etcher. And they have a version for Mac, they have a version for Windows, they have a version for Linux. I'm running a Mac here, so you're going to see the Mac version, but it looks pretty much the same on any of the operating systems. The only difference is the procedure to install it. You know how to install something on your main computer, just do that, and you're going to wind up with the app, which, okay, not too much to it. Etcher, okay, there's a new version. I will skip that for now. This is good enough. And it's only got three parts to it. One where you select the file you want to write, where do you want to write it to, and the button to say do it. And this takes IMG files, ISO files, zip, and some other ones. Okay, so here's my two images. I can choose either one. Raspian is the default, Ubuntu is the other one. This time I'm going to go with the Ubuntu. Makes no difference, you do them all the same way. And this now tells the file name. I'm going to tell it where I want it to go. And I want it to go to the 16 gigabyte SD card that I just put in there. It's a brand new one. And now I hit flash. And it will start. Needs my password. The computer's password. And you can see the thing going here. Time-lapse is a wonderful thing. Okay, then after it's done making the disk, it will verify things, and it has unmounted it. Flash complete, one successful device. Okay, so this is done. I can eject the disk, put it into the Raspberry Pi, and we are ready to go. Okay, so now we've got our operating system on the SD card. It's time to put the rest of this stuff together. Inside the Raspberry Pi case, is, hey look, it's a Raspberry Pi. And there's some instructions and stuff, which we're not going to mess with. Power supply didn't come in a box, so that's easy enough. Now I've got this case. This is a new case. I haven't used this before. It's from Flirk. Flirk Raspberry Pi 3 case. Well, we knew that. Okay. Empty it out. And here's what we've got. Aluminum on the sides, plastic on the top. And inside we've got some screws. And a package here for the Raspberry Pi 2B and 3B, or the 3B Plus. Now from what I have heard, the little adhesive heatsink padding stuff is a little thinner on the B Plus because, I don't know, I guess the board is a little thicker, the chip is a little bit thicker. So, I'm going to put this together. All that's in this is the 3B Plus. All this is a little very thin adhesive pad. Instead of heatsink compound, it uses this heatsink glue, I guess you'd call it, which goes right in here on the big square knob that stands up. Now you notice how I did this. I did not pull both sides of the adhesive off at the same time. If you do, it sticks to your finger, you can't do pressure, and it causes all kinds of problems. Now I'm going to figure out where this thing goes. Looks like it fits right in here on top of this, like that. Try to make the holes line up before I screw anything. Now it feels stuck. Nope, it's good. There we go. Okay. You got to put the little audio port in the hole first or it won't slide right. And that looks like it fits right in there. Okay, so that's the way it goes in. And now can I get it back out? Okay, so I will now peel off the other bit of adhesive. Transparent little bit there. Okay. Make sure the holes line up correctly, which they do. Start the screws in the holes. That's probably not right. I think I need to put the lid on first. This way. It's got a little slot down here for the SD card to go in. Push it down. It's fairly tight. I don't have to push hard. Put the screws in the holes. Pull out my handy dandy little miniature screwdriver set. That's a little bitty Phillips. Okay, so that is all assembled. Everything looks like it's together in the holes. Looks good to me. Now the SD card, you plug that we've got the operating system on. You slide that right in here, one way or the other. And it just slides right in. And that's it. Now what we have to do, we hook in the HDMI plug to the monitor, the audio jack to a speaker, mouse, keyboard. You can use Bluetooth mouse and keyboard if you want to, or I'm going to use wired ones because I've got them laying around here and they're cheap. The Ethernet you plug in if you want to, or you use the Wi-Fi. And then lastly you connect the power supply in the hole that takes it, and it'll come right up. So let's take care of that. Okay, so here we are again. Now this one has a mouse and a keyboard plugged into the USB sockets. On this side over here, it has the audio cable and an HD cable. This one over here is where the power will plug in when I'm ready for it. And on this end we have the SD card stuck in the slot there. And the back doesn't have any plugs. So here we go. Okay, so now I will plug in the wire. And on the monitor, should get the test pattern. And then the Raspberry should show up. And a few minutes later, it will start to boot. Setting up a lot of things, so it's a little slow right now. Future boots won't take this long. The mouse works. Still loading. This is the, what language do I want? English. It has some accessibility options up here if you need that at this point. US keyboard, yep, that works. Several Wi-Fi networks. We have the 2.4 and the 5.0 here, so 2.4 gigahertz and 5.0 gigahertz, so it does both types of Wi-Fi. Connecting. Hopefully I typed that in right. Automatically connect to this network? Yeah, okay. New York, that's close enough. Call it whatever you want. Log in automatically? Probably not a good idea. Require my password to log in. Normally you'd want a longer password than that. Now the system is already on the SD card, so it's not really got anything to install, but it is setting up, well, like I said, some local things. Okay, that took roughly 5 minutes, and it probably downloaded some things and installed some things, and now you can see that it's got user Brian and it wants my password. Again, the setup for Raspian is going to be different. My experience is that Raspian is actually a lot faster, but now we're here. We can look at my home directory. Got Firefox up there, got the menu with all kinds of things on here. Again, this is a much heavier footprint than Raspian. There's a lot of stuff going on here, a lot of different things. Bring up the terminal. Nothing really here just yet, but software and updates. Software updater. This is the one I actually wanted. We'll go through and update anything that's not current. It may have already done this. Nope, it has updates. What do we got? LibreOffice, Firefox, a bunch of other stuff. Okay, well, we will update now. Okay, I don't know how long that's going to take, but you get the idea. It's booted up. We've logged in. You put your username and password in, and then it's time to explore. And this is, of course, using the desktop version. Okay, while we wait for this to update, we can fix it so it boots directly to the command line and we don't have to deal with this desktop. As you can see, the desktop here is kind of slow. It does a lot of stuff, but on this channel, we're talking about the command line. So we go to the Mate terminal. And we type sudo system control set default multi-user target. And it asks for the root password, which it does some stuff. Now, when we reboot, it should go straight to the command line. As soon as the updates are finished, we'll reboot and try that. Okay, so it's done with the updates. We will now restart, and if that change we made works, it should reboot probably just to the straight command line. Test pattern. Raspberries. And an actual boot. Coming, coming, coming. And there it is, Brian Pi login. I guess it assumes that I am Brian, and there's my password. And at this point, I can install software, run software, do whatever I want. No desktop. It's going to be pretty fast at this point. What do we do with it at this point? Well, we'll talk about that next week. See you next time. Bye.